So, my dear friends, I am very happy to come across to you once again in this format of the Shepherd's Voice. As the Archbishop, the media, and also our own website gives me the honor of coming to you again and again every week. We are at the close of month of January. God bless. We had beautiful climate and many good things happened during this month. Let me now begin with the message of the week. It's a very powerful message. We have heard it said often, God's ways are not our ways. Our ways are always structured. Our ways are planned. Our ways are anticipated, and many a time we want God also to walk in our footsteps, as it were, rather than we walk in God's footsteps. The message of this Sunday is I would say, a little different from the others. It's something upside down, because we all look for success, we all look for great experiences, we all look for people who with gusto, who can deliver the goods. And in this sort of rat race of judging people, of awarding people, of giving people marks and competitions and awards, etc., where do the poor count? Where do those people who don't succeed count? We just lay them by the side. It's a rat race for the successful ones. And so we see in the readings of today, the first reading starts with, it speaks of very poor people and people who are lowly. Seek the Lord, all you humble of the earth. I will leave as a remnant in your midst a people who are humble and lowly. God doesn't call for the rich and the capable, the successful. God's eyes reach out to those distances in order to search out the lowly, the humble. And the first reading of the Corinthians chapter 1, verse 26 to 31, St. Paul also says, also for those little jobs that God has for the world, for the people in the world, He doesn't go in looking out for those who have learned, who are educated, who are successful, who are bright, who are always making impressions. But strange that St. Paul says, God chose the foolish of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly and despised of the world, those who count for nothing. They are nothing. Their names are nowhere. They don't have a visiting card. They don't have people who can present themselves. They are not people who are recognized. To reduce to nothing those who say they are something. Today's gospel is about nothing and something. And those who are nothing, God makes them something in the eyes of God. And the gospel is beautiful. It's called the Magna Carta of our religion. And the center of the gospel, as it were, giving us the mind, the vision, the mission of Jesus. And this particular gospel, what's called the Sermon on the Mount, attracted great people, even Mahatma Gandhi, that he learned it by heart. And that was his philosophy of his life, because he used it very often. Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who are meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the clean of heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness. And blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you. You see, just the opposite of the world says. The world doesn't say, blessed are the poor. Blessed are the rich. Blessed are those who have money in their banks and perhaps properties. Blessed are those who mourn, the gospel says, Jesus says. The world says, blessed are those who are happy. Everyone seems to be happy, everyone seems to be smiling. We like to take our photographs only when we are smiling. They say when you smile, when you laugh, everyone gathers around you. But when you are crying, when you are mourning, perhaps not many are with you. Blessed are the peacemakers. We say, blessed are those, right is might, we say. We have to fight for our rights and we have to fight for justice. But who speaks about peace? For us, peace means making many people quiet, walking over the people, doing violence to the people in order to make peace. But Jesus says the other way about. When someone slaps you on your one cheek, he says, show the other. So very simple as that. Show the other. And we have seen how it works in many times. Blessed are the merciful. The world says, take revenge. A tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. So you have to take revenge. And after taking revenge, when the other person says sorry to you, perhaps you can make peace. Jesus doesn't go that way. He says, you take the initiative and make peace. Blessed are those who fight for justice, but not only justice for others, justice for yourself also, but blessed are those who suffer, Jesus says. And blessed when people insult you, when they persecute you, when you are considered nothing. How Jesus himself, he was considered as a criminal, but then on the cross he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. This is the message of Christ today, of the lowly, of the humble, of the poor, of those who are not capable. Perhaps we can take a great consolation in this. There's a beautiful question at the end of this sharing that I have to answer, which comes to that ultimately we stand alone before God, and God sees not just our outward appearances, our makeup, all that we try to show ourselves. God sees our heart. And the lowliness, the humility, the incapacity, perhaps even sometimes to cry out and says, Lord, I cannot. Lord, I cannot do it. And perhaps Lord will do. The lives of saints is full of this, that God chose his disciples, his apostles, those who were fishermen. They were not mathematicians, they were not calculators, they were not accountants, they were not managers, they were fishermen. They don't even knew the language properly. They did not even to speak properly. And so also many of our saints, when we see that, it's a great consolation for us that today's gospel raises us all to say, those who are not able, those who are not capable, in front of God, they stand very, very tall. I now take you to a beautiful visit of a VIP to our Archdiocese this week. Last Sunday, the pro-prefect of the Congregation of Evangelization came to India, and his purpose was to address the Bishops' Conference that was going on in St. John's Medical College. And since he came a day earlier, in fact it was planned that he should come 2 days earlier, but because of the little flight sort of confusions, he could arrive only 1 day, and he was in the Archdiocese. A great man. His name is Luis Antonio Cardinal Tagle. The cardinal name is written in between his name and surname. For practical purpose, we could say Cardinal Tagle. And he is a Filipino by birth, and he was for many years, or rather all his life, he was in Philippines. He was made Cardinal of Philippines about 10 years ago by Pope Benedict, and the present Pope has taken him as one of the most important functionaries in the Vatican. He is in charge of what's called the countries of the mission. To explain to you a little, under him come about 4 continents, the Africa, Asia, South America, Oceania, Australia, and so many other countries. And, among us in the ecclesiastical world, there is something like, all know the Pope, the Holy Father. And so the pro-prefect of the Congregation of the Propaganda or the Propagation of Faith is called the Red Pope. The Red Pope. The Red Pope means the Pope of those missions which are coming up, which are burning, which are sort of coming to the light, as it were. And therefore, he is a very powerful man, but very, very humble. Very, very humble. He arrived almost at midnight on Sunday, and we were so happy to receive him at the airport. But then he made no fuss at all. He just came, he slept, and the next day he was ready to say that, where are we going today? And so I took him to the, first of all, I took him to the, the cathedral where our little children had gathered for Mass. Cathedral has got 4 schools and the children were there. It was such a beautiful experience interacting the Cardinal with the small children. He was telling them stories, and I think he would have gone on, but then we had to tell him there's the next program. And the Archbishop, the Cardinal, is a man of what's called interreligious harmony, interreligious dialogue. Even in the Philippines, he was known to dialogue with many, many cultures. And so when he came, when he asked me, we had arranged a visit of him, first of all, in the Qadri Mosque, the big mosque that is in front of our own Archbishop's house. And when he went there, he just mingled with them. And they were so happy and said, they themselves said, your Cardinal is such a simple man and such a holy man, and the way he interacted with them, they were very much impressed. We also took him to the ISKCON temple. The ISKCON temple is run by the Shaivites, and very learned Hindu and the scholars there, and they also interacted with the Cardinal, and they were very happy that Cardinal came to visit this particular place of the Hindu worshipping place. And the Cardinal everywhere said that religion is meant to make peace, and let us be together, let us walk together, and they were so happy. We also took him to St. Peter's Seminary. Actually, we had arranged on the previous day the Mass of the altar servers, where about 650 altar servers had gathered in St. Peter's, and the Cardinal was supposed to say Mass for them. Unfortunately, because of his flight confusion, he could not. But on the next day, he was happy to see the seminary, the rector, the students, and he addressed them. And there also was going on a seminar on ecumenism, and he was so happy also to meet the leaders of the other religions. This was his visit before he left for St. John's Medical College to address the bishops, which was a great experience for the bishops also. I now speak to you about the Conference of the Bishops, the Conference of the Catholic Bishops of India, that took place in St. John's Medical College, and today Sunday is the last day. About 150 bishops have gathered from all over the country. These are all the Latin diocese bishops, archbishops, cardinals, and Cardinal Philippe Neri Ferrand is the president of this august assembly, and Archbishop Anil Kutto of Delhi is the Secretary General, and also there are the other office bearers. Father Stephen Alantara is the Deputy Secretary, and there are so many other office bearers. And so this is almost a 6-day program that we had, and the theme of the conference was a beautiful theme to say that telling the story of Jesus in our context in the synodal way. Telling the story of Jesus. We have all heard the words, big words like proclamation, evangelization, mission. They are all big words. And this Filipino Cardinal Tagle, who came to us, who actually coined this word for Philippines, for the Asian Assembly. And it's a very simple. What is evangelization? What is proclamation? It's telling the story of Jesus. It's telling the story of Jesus. And how do you say a story? For the children, you make your actions, perhaps make it interesting for them with this and that. For the elders, perhaps you can do it in dance. Perhaps for some others, you can do it in art. For the others, you can do it in a skit. There are so many ways you can tell the story of Jesus. And therefore, evangelization today is telling the story of Jesus. It's not that we are going to convert people, we are not going to force people, we are not going to throw freebies in front of them in order to make, but we just tell what God has done into my life. What is my story in which God has entered? What is God's story in which I would like to enter? So ultimately, it's the story of Jesus that the bishops discussed in different regions. How would they say it? There was one day a small clip from what we call the Jharkhand region. And beautifully, Jharkhand regions are those people who are still perhaps developing. They are the tribals. Some of them are still living in the forest places on the banks of the river. But then for them, God means something else. God means that God has given them something. The fish that they get from the river, the fruits that they get from the trees, this is all God's blessings for them. And they bless and thank God. And how the missionaries have spoken to them about Jesus in the form of a story, in the form of a rendering, in the form of an art, in the form of perhaps drama and even films and pictures. So therefore the bishops discussed all these 6 days as to how to make Jesus presentable, or rather how to tell the story of Jesus to others, perhaps not only we bishops, the priests and the people. Surprisingly, many bishops told us that the lay people who are missionaries, or rather who are ones who tell the story of Jesus to the others, the catechists, the families, the associations, they are doing the work. In many of these areas, the priests are not many, the religious are not there, but still God's work, or rather God's story is being told, the story of Jesus being told and retold for generations. So this was a very happy experience for all of us bishops in the St. John's Medical College when we heard the lessons. And the prominent speaker was Cardinal Tagle. And he beautifully explained to us how perhaps in the Philippines and around the world the story of Jesus can be told again and again. I now take you to a feast that is coming on 2nd of February. It's a feast that we called the Feast of the Presentation of our Lord. You might remember the scripture in the 2nd chapter of the Gospel of Luke. Jesus, after his birth, he is presented by Mary and Joseph in the temple, and Simeon and Anna, the prophet and prophetess Anna, are there, and they speak about Jesus. And Simeon speaks very hard words. The factual words, the truthful words to Mary, to say that, Mary, this child is destined to be for the rise and fall of many, and a sword shall pierce your heart. Beautiful words, but Mary must have understood it, that Jesus is called to sacrifice, and she has to sacrifice Jesus for the sake of the world. And therefore this feast of Jesus' life on personal offering is also considered as the day of consecration of us priests and religious. The religious, because they also make their profession of commitment to God. We also, by our ordination, we also offer ourselves, and therefore we celebrate this feast as the feast, or rather as the day of consecration, as the day of commitment for all of us. I invite you, brothers and sisters, to pray for our priests and religious priests and religious sisters also. We have dedicated ourselves. We have made up our mind that we may not look back, that we may always take a step ahead, and in spite of our small slips and falls, that God always walks with us, that we remember our consecration just as Jesus was consecrated or offered himself, that we may also continuously offer ourselves to God as a burning victim, as a sacrifice to God of our life. Now, my brothers and sisters, I take you to a very interesting question, a very thought-provoking. The question goes like this: is going for retreats and pilgrimages important for a Catholic? The question B: what is the difference between the two? That means the retreat and the pilgrimage. And C: how often should we go for retreats and pilgrimages? It's a beautiful question, I say, because it's very thought-provoking. There are two things that are spoken here. One is a retreat and one is a pilgrimage. First of all, what is a retreat and what's a pilgrimage? And the question also says, is it good for us to go? It's important for a Catholic to go for a retreat or pilgrimage. Surely yes. The answer is a resounding yes. we should go for retreats, we should go for pilgrimages. What's the difference between these two? First of all, a retreat is a recollection that a person does in the presence of God, in a place that is isolated, so that he can spend some time, some of his thoughts, some of his imaginations, some of his perhaps experiences in a lonely place. We see that Jesus himself went to a lonely place. The word lonely place for Jesus technically was a place of recollection or retreat. In Mark chapter 6 verse 31, Jesus tells the disciples, "Come away by yourselves to a lonely place and rest a while." It's a retreat, sort of a retreat. Jesus is telling the disciples because he sees them so much distracted. They want to look important. They want to stand close to Jesus. They want to be noticed by everybody. And just as people pay homage to Jesus, perhaps they also expected to be paid homage. And so in this, Jesus knows that they need to go a little aside and pray. In Mark 15:21 to 28, the Canaanite woman who asks for mercy for her daughter, we see that Jesus also comes from a place that is a lonely place, a lonely place. In Matthew 6:13 to 18, Jesus also takes the disciples toward the rocky side of Jordan and a place called Caesarea Philippi. The town is called Caesarea Philippi. And there, the beautiful part of Jesus' life, where he confronts his disciples and asks him, "What do people say I am?" And they give so many answers. Some say you are John the Baptist, some say you are Elijah, some Elisha, and so many other prophets. But Jesus asked them the end of the retreat question. Every retreat ends with a deep experience for us. And the end of the retreat question is, who do you say I am? Who do you say I am? That is more important. It's not important that people call you so many things. People have so many good things to say or bad things to say about you. But ultimately, standing in front of God, who do you say I am? Who do you say God is in your life? So this is a retreat is going to a lonely place, going to a place where nobody distracts you or disturbs you. Perhaps you have someone to guide you, a preacher, or someone perhaps who leads you through his words, through the scriptures, to a certain path, to certain recollection. And what are the things that are useful in the retreat, or what do we do it? First of all, it's a rest for body and soul and mind. People are busy. And you see in Bangalore, it's a hectic, or a life that is just running, hectic life. There's no time. And so for such people, it's a rest for soul, it's a rest for mind, and a rest for body also. Secondly, it's a time to recollect and evaluate. How did the last year go? Perhaps how did the last 6 months go in my life? What I have done? Where did I slip? Why I should have done that? Or why should not? Perhaps I should not have done that. What is the step? Perhaps to evaluate something about our life, which is not possible in every what we call the humdrum day of ours, where we are running and rushing and pushing. And thirdly, we search for God or answer from God. Many people are disillusioned. They have made money. They have made wealth. They have got anything and everything, but still they are not happy. So therefore, retreat perhaps will tell you where you are running, you are rushing. You need to stop a little. And therefore, you are in search of something. Perhaps first of all, you are in search of God himself. Because God is very hazy for you. A God, one who gives you, who satisfies you, is your God. But when you fail, whom do you blame? Many of the people blame God himself. I have been praying, but God has not given me. God has not given me money. God has not given me success. Perhaps searching for God or something from God. Something from God. This something could be something that fulfills your life. Perhaps even a change of job, a change of place. Perhaps a partner in your life if you are not married. Or perhaps a state of life, you want to become a priest or religious. Perhaps you want to give yourself for the sake of the poor. So this is a time of search. And lastly, I also say that it's pray for God's grace and support. It's not that all the people who go for retreat are in big crisis. There are people who are happy. And so asking God to support, asking God to help you. I am going for this, perhaps this expedition. I am taking up this work. Or perhaps I am choosing a life's partner. Or perhaps I am wanting to be a priest or religious or something in my life. Lord, I ask for support. I am very happy. I am very happy, but then I need you. I need your support. This is the retreat and the content of the retreat that we go. What's a pilgrimage? What's a pilgrimage? A pilgrimage, I could say that a retreat could be made in a pilgrimage place also. You could go to a place of pilgrimage and there make your retreat. And it would be a very nice retreat because pilgrimages are also places of holiness, of saints, of Our Lady, of some importance where people have gone and found peace. But pilgrimage itself is meaning to say it's a walking or going to a place. You can't make pilgrimage at home. Perhaps you could retreat. You could make a retreat in your place which is closer to you from your home, not many kilometers, you could go and make. But pilgrimage is also always going to another place, perhaps a walking pilgrimage or traveling pilgrimage. Or perhaps sometimes some go to abroad, Holy Land, Rome. It's a long pilgrimage by flight. So pilgrimage is another place. But once again, your heart and mind is attuned that you are going to a place, that you are going to a special place. We find also Jesus also went for pilgrimage. When he was 12 years old, his parents, Joseph and Mary, took him on a pilgrimage to the temple. Actually, for the Jews, every feast, the people had to make a pilgrimage. And the Feast of the Tents, they call it, the Feast of the Passover. And so for these times, the people had to make a pilgrimage. And for the Jews and for the Orientals, it is in their life. Perhaps they go once a year, maybe once in some 2-3 years, or maybe once in a lifetime, but they do make a pilgrimage. And so pilgrimage is also advantageous because we go to another place, we leave aside our life here, we go there. And in the pilgrimage, on the pilgrimage, all things are not arranged. Perhaps you have to work, you have to walk, you go by a bus and it breaks down, or perhaps you go somewhere and the flight reaches late. There are many things that happen, but all this is part of the pilgrimage. Secondly, the pilgrimage is not done alone. It's done in a group. It's done with a family. It's done with a community of people that are close to you, that are known to you. Of course, not necessarily. You could even make a pilgrimage alone. There's nothing, no one forbids you. But pilgrimage is always in a group. It's a pilgrim people that are working and walking together. And in this pilgrimage, there are young, there are old, there are someone, perhaps you have to push their wheelchair, there are some who walk fast, there are some who go low. And these are all family experiences, a community experience of people sharing together. The pilgrimage also builds up a community, brings the people together. Perhaps when you go for a pilgrimage, the parish priest announces a pilgrimage. People are not knowing each other. Someone comes from that area, someone comes from there, someone comes from another place. But when they are going, they become friends. They start sharing their stories. They perhaps, as I said, they tell the story of Jesus in their life as to why they are going for this pilgrimage. There is also in the pilgrimage appreciation of God, God's grace, even perhaps an intervention in your life, or intervention we seek of the saint of that particular place that we go, and that's one. Pilgrimages are also made to make a great decision in one's life. There are many saintly persons who cannot decide what is required of me. Even in the retreat, perhaps things become little clear, but when they go on a pilgrimage, they say things become more clear. That God speaks to them and says, this is the place that I would like to convey my decision or perhaps my experience to you in a very special way. When you go to Rome, when you go to Italy, there's a place called Loreto, south of Italy. And there is that Basilica of Mother Mary, according to the tradition, the Church of Annunciation of the Holy Land was lifted by the Crusaders and brought and the church of Loreto was made. And so there are many people who go there because ultimately, Mary in the Annunciation answered to God, "Your will be done. Your will be done. I am the handmaid of the Lord. Be done to me according to your will." So there are many saints and big people who go there in order to seek what is God's will in their life. Because I see so many things. I'm pulled from so many sides. What should I do? Should I take this decision? Should I not do this? And therefore to seek God's will. As you come out of that basilica, there are 2-3 slabs of this marble where the names of the people who visited there are written. To go to see from the 15th, 16th century onwards, there are almost, I think, 200 or 300 saints who have visited there in order to know the will of God, in order to know that what's God. St. Ignatius of Loyola, St. Francis of Assisi, St. Francis de Sales, so many saints. And I saw that a little below, one of the last names is of Pope John the 23rd. Now is the saint, St. John the 23rd. St. John the 23rd was in a big crisis because the church was in confusion. Whether I should start this, what we call the council. The council, is it foolish on my part to announce a council or to do it or not? The Pope was already 83-year-old, an old man, what big things he could do. But then he goes to that place and there he decides that the council has to be convened, and that's the history for us that the Second Vatican Council took place. And so the pilgrimage helps us very much. I was recently very happy to hear that the parish of St. Michael's of Shantinagar, the parish priest along with about 40-50 pilgrims went to Saint Devasagayam's place in Kottar, Nagarkoil for 3-4 days, and the people were together, and he was explaining to me how the people were very much impressed and there was a sense of bonding, a unity among them. I encourage our parishes, our religious to go on pilgrimages. Perhaps take some people with you. It will be a great experience for you and a sort of a landmark in the life of the people also to do something for God and for the church. I wish you well. May this week be a very happy one for you.
My dear friends, I'm sure you have witnessed the shepherd's voice which is being presented by our beloved Archbishop, Most Reverend Dr. Peter Machado, the Archbishop of Bangalore, who takes so much of interest and concern in order to bring the various topics, the contextual aspects in order to inform, educate and catechize all of us, the priests, the religious and faithful of this vast Archdiocese. And I'm sure you are enjoying this program, Shepherd's Voice, and I request each one of you to share with your other colleagues, friends and family and relatives, near and dear ones, so that everyone in this Archdiocese can be more closer to listen to the Archbishop on this Shepherd's Voice, the weekly feature. My dear friends, as I've always told, that this is a wonderful platform wherein we can connect to the shepherd of this Archdiocese, wherein he brings in the interesting topics in order to increase our devotion and love towards God, and also to know the spiritual matters that concerns our faith. In a very special way, you are most welcome to ask your questions, queries, and you can send them to us at archdblr@gmail.com, and you will also see our mobile number in and through which you can connect with our media center, Ave Studios and the Archdiocesan Communication Center. Please do write to us your feedback, your opinions. Thank you. Continue to watch and continue to share with others.